Get lumped up tonight. Listen to Rossington, RockerMike. On the only podcast that I'll hear that won't make me wanna rip off my ears. Oh, the Rock Show, 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 the Rock Show. Oh, I want the Rock Show. The Rock Show, 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 the Rock Show. I want the Rock Show. Let's get lumped up.
Hello, people, and welcome to another episode of the Rock Show. This is episode 156, and we're talking about Southern rock. Lynyrd Skynyrd. What you got for me, Mike?
Yeah, well, it's the second rock show in a row with some Southern rock. Last time we talked about the Allman Brothers. Today's Lynyrd Skynyrd. You know, what can you say? I mean, they're a classic American band, you know, similar to the Allman Brothers in the sense that they went through a lot of tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, a crazy excess, a lot. I mean, Lynyrd Skynyrd had a reputation for being like brawlers and, you know, barroom fights and things like that. It's a great story. Their music is still lives on today. What can I say? You know, they're just one of the greatest bands that ever existed in America. You know, same with the Allman Brothers.
Dude, but these guys, man, they made one song that haunts me forever.
Freebird.
Freebird.
It's played out. It's, you know, you know what? It's funny. I've always gone back and forth with that song, and you know, when I hear it on the radio, I usually turn it off. Okay, if I hear it in a bar or something, I'll deal with it because it's a good drinking song.
Yeah, it is.
And all their music is. But one thing that always reminds me now for probably close to 20 years is the way it was used in the movie The Devil's Rejects. You remember that?
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, the ending scene when they're just going to go in and shoot everybody up and they get shot in the car and everything. Yeah. And, you know, it's a great scene with that song. You know, Freebird is something that, you know, cover bands do in a bar or a place. It's just one of those songs. I think like stuff like Simple Man is better. You know, not to take away from Freebird, but I just like some of the other stuff a lot more. You know, it's kind of like the Ramones. It's like the Ramones when I Want to Be Sedated. You know what I mean? It's just played out. Yeah. You know, you want to hear the other shit instead. You know, but it's a great story though. What we got today.
Yeah, I used to hear that song every time because there was a tag team called the Freebird, and guess what song they came out with?
Freebird.
The Freebird.
I mean, there was a long running joke, you know, like years back when people would just yell out Freebird, even not for Lynyrd Skynyrd, like any band. Just yell out Freebird.
I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, I was at like Coney Island High, like seeing the Dickies, and somebody yelled that out one night. You know what I mean?
Freebird! Oh man, yeah, I remember that. People would do that shit all the time, man. It was so funny. It was so funny. All right, Mike. So let's get started. What you got?
All right. Well, you know, the story of Lynyrd Skynyrd goes back to the early '60s, actually 1964, in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where it all originated.
Were the Allman Brothers also from Jacksonville?
Yes, and you're going to see some connections with them.
Okay.
Tom Dowd produced some Skynyrd, and he produced a lot of the Allman Brothers stuff.
Okay.
Their brother, the brother of Phil Walden, okay, who managed the Allman Brothers, his brother was involved with Lynyrd Skynyrd. Okay, so it's kind of like a incestuous thing. I don't know if they ever played together. That would be a good question. If anybody out there can look that up, I'm just wondering if they ever did. That would be some fucking show if they ever played together.
You want to hear something? The Lynyrd Skynyrd still playing today, but
it's like
nobody.
It's like one original guy. You know, like I'm not. I'll go into the different lineups towards the end, but you know, the first couple albums up to Street Survivors is classic. You can't go wrong with them.
Yeah.
Everything after that, well, you know, Ronnie was gone and all that. You could take it or leave it. But even live, they concentrate mostly on their old stuff. I saw them once.
Yeah.
I saw them once. Anyway, so back in '64, the summer of '64, Ronnie Van Zant, Bob Burns, and Gary Rossington, okay, became friends with each other through a baseball league. Okay, they played baseball and in rival teams with each other, and they became friends based on the fact that they were musicians. Also, they were going in that direction. They decided to jam together one day, and it really it took off. They realized they had some chemistry. They said, let's start a band. So they went to the garage of Burns' parents. All right, and that's where they would jam there. The first song they ever jammed together on was "Time Is on My Side" by the Rolling Stones, which was a big hit that year in '64. Immediately, they would run to guitarist Alan Collins that they knew to join the band. And the legend goes is that when Ronnie Van Zant drove into Collins' driveway to talk to him, like Collins was afraid of him for some reason. Like he ran and went up a tree and had to be talked down. And just be like, we want you to join the band. I'm not here to kick your ass, kind of thing, But he, when he heard about it, he immediately was like, okay, I'll play with you guys. Then bass player Larry Junstrom rounded up the lineup, and the band settled on the name My Backyard. That's what they decided to call themselves. Later, they would call themselves the Noble Five. And finally, they would settle on the 1% by 1968. So they played a while for a few years under different names. There's not much material out there of this, but from what I understand, it's very Beatles oriented 60s kind of stuff, psychedelic-y kind of stuff, garagey kind of stuff, not a Southern rock. They hadn't really settled in on that sound yet. Okay, but the name the 1% actually didn't sit too well with Ronnie Van Zant, because a lot of people used to tease the band and say, "Oh yeah, you're only 1% talent." Okay, so it leaves it open for taunting. Okay, and Bob Burns suggested the name Lynyrd Skynyrd, like LEONARD SKINNERD. And it was based on two people. I don't know if you remember the Alan Sherman song, "Hello Mother, Hello Father."
Yeah.
He's talking about being in summer camp. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's a character in that song with the name Lynyrd. Okay, so they like that. And then it was also based on their gym teacher in high school, who was named Lynyrd Skynyrd, SKINNER. Yeah. And he used to break their balls about the length of their hair. He would in high school. He actually broke everybody's balls. It wasn't just them. He very much enforced the rule of no long hair. And in fact, Gary Rossington got hassled so much by him and other teachers that he dropped out of high school because of his long hair.
Wow.
Yeah, different times, So the distinctive spelling that we all know about Lynyrd Skynyrd, the LYNYRD, okay, for Lynyrd, they started doing that by 1970. The gym teacher, Mr. Skinner, actually became a fan of the band and became very friendly with them afterwards. He let them use a picture of his real estate sign that he had in front of his house for one of their albums. And he actually introduced them one time at a show in Jacksonville at the Memorial Coliseum.
Wow.
So he also, became friendly with them. Obviously, I guess he liked that they used the name. So by 1970, Lynyrd Skynyrd had become the top band in Jacksonville.
Yes,
they often headlined for local concerts, okay, and they opened for several national acts as they came through Florida, okay. Pat Armstrong, a Jacksonville native and partner in Macon, Georgia, based, it was called, he had a company called Hustlers Incorporated. That was like a management company. There was a guy named Phil Walden who ended up managing the Allman Brothers. His younger brother, Alan Walden, ended up being the band manager for Lynyrd Skynyrd. Now, Phil, like I said, was managing the Allman Brothers. Armstrong would leave Hustlers Incorporated shortly thereafter to start his own agency. And Alan Walden, however, would stay on until 1974, when management would turn over to a guy named Peter Rudge. But in the early 70s, the band's reputation grew through the South, and they kind of like developed this Southern rock sound, okay, that they really kind of invented. The Allman Brothers also, okay,
yeah, but that was
Allman Brothers was a little bit more blues, than country, okay, a little bit different mix of kind of the same ingredients. Skynyrd blended kind of like country music, blues, some hard rock sound, like psychedelic almost at the time, and British rock, okay, was thrown in there a little bit. You could hear like, Cream and things like that.
Yeah, you can hear a lot of influence in their music. Hell yeah.
Right. Now, during this time in the early 70s, the band went through some lineup changes. Junstrom would leave, okay, and was briefly replaced by Greg T. Walker on bass. At that time, Ricky Medlock joined as a second drummer, okay, and an occasional second vocalist to help fortify Burns on drums. Medlock had grown up with the founding Lynyrd Skynyrd members, and his grandfather, Shorty Medlock, was an influence in the writing for the song The Ballad of Curtis Lowe. Okay, so that's got his influence from that. Ronnie, I believe, wrote a lot of that song, I believe. In 1972, the band, then comprising of Van Zant, Collins, Rossington, Burns, Wilkerson, and Powell, was discovered by musician, songwriter, producer, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears member Al Kooper. Okay, Al Kooper had a lot of connections to Bob Dylan. Okay, if you know the song "Like a Rolling Stone" by Bob Dylan, Al Kooper came up with the organ riffs in the beginning.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he plays that. He came up with that idea, and Dylan liked it, and the song is known for that. And plus, he was in Blood, Sweat, and Tears. They were popular, and he was becoming known as a producer. So he had attended one of their shows in Atlanta and got them signed to a label called Sounds of the South that was distributed by MCA Records. And he also would produce their first album. Okay.
Wow.
Bass player Wilkerson was nervous about this album becoming famous. He had some kind of hang up about becoming famous, his doubts about it. So he only plays on 2 songs on that album. They replaced him. Okay, what they did was they brought in guitarist Ed King, who was in the Strawberry Alarm Clock, who had that song Incense and Peppermints. Okay, that was their big hit. But he came in to play bass. Now, Wilkerson had some other songs that he was involved in the writing on that album. Okay, but he only plays on 2 songs. Now, Ed King completed some of the unfinished songs, including the guitar section on Simple Man. All right, he was involved in some writing on that. Wilkerson would rejoin Lynyrd Skynyrd, okay, and after the album was completed, and King would stay on, okay, as a third guitarist. All right, that's what they were known for. They were known for having 3 guitars most of the time, Skynyrd, okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes 2 drummers. Okay, so that's some of the similarities they had with the Allman Brothers. The Allman Brothers were very much like that too, if you remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now, the band released their debut album, which is called Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, and they spell it out phonetically, okay, on August 13th, 1973. It sold over 1 million copies and was awarded a gold disc. The album featured their most famous song, your favorite, Freebird, okay, and that got a lot of national airplay, getting to number 19 on Billboard charts. I thought it got a little higher, but that's pretty good. Still top 20. Lynyrd Skynyrd's fan base would grow rapidly through 1973. They toured a lot because they opened up for The Who during The Who's Quadrophenia tour, and a lot of people outside the South and the East Coast got to really see who they were. They would follow up that album with 1974's Second Helping. That featured Ed King on it, okay, Collins and Rossington, all collaborating with Van Zant for the songwriting, okay, and it took off, that album too, and it kind of cemented their breakthrough that they had earlier in 73. The single that was big off that album was Sweet Home Alabama, which got to number 8 on the charts that August. And during their peak years, most of their records sold over 1 million copies, but Sweet Home Alabama is their only top 10 hit. So,
I thought Sweet Home Alabama made it a lot higher.
Yeah, I don't know what it was up against that month, okay, but it's definitely a song that's held on. You still hear it on the radio.
Yeah.
You know,
it was a song. It was also "Fuck You" to Neil Young.
Some people interpret that. I think the band says it's not true. Okay, I think because the band was friendly with Neil Young,
yeah.
But there is that one line where he's saying, like, I hope Neil Young still remembers.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a fuck you or because Neil Young had that song Southern Man.
Yeah.
And Neil Young was a Canadian playing in a West Coast band, and what the fuck did he know about Southern Man? So I don't know. I never got into that whole controversy, but apparently they made something out of it.
They did make a lot of the fans, or at least the fans did.
People always got to have some drama, I understand the guy. I understand they were all friends. I think they even collaborated on some stuff that never got released or was shown.
That'd be something I'd like to hear. Wouldn't you like to hear that? That would be good.
Yeah. I'm not a big Neil Young fan, but yeah, I'll check it out if you could. But by 75, personal issues began to take its toll in the band. In January, drummer Burns left, after suffering a mental breakdown on the European tour. He was replaced by Kentucky native and ex-Marine Artimus Pyle. The band's third album was called Nothing Fancy, and it was recorded kind of hastily in only 17 days. And Al Kooper he was producing again, and he was very frustrated with the band because they really weren't prepared. And then they wanted to rush through it. I think they wanted to get back out on tour. Also, they were getting a little bit like rock stars, with their own little things going on. A lot of excess. Ronnie was wasted every day on Jack Daniels, and whatever. And the rest of them, a lot of them were. They didn't all do drugs. I don't think Artimus really did much more than smoke weed.
Yeah.
But some of the other guys were heavier into stuff. Basically, Cooper said, "Okay, I'll work on this record. I'll mix it when it's completed. I'm parting ways with you guys," and that was the agreement. They went out on tour right after the album was done. Nothing Fancy didn't do as well as the last 2 records, but it sold moderately enough. I mean, it has I'm trying to remember what's on that album. Might be like, is it Ooh That Smell? I forget.
Oh, it might be Ooh.
Okay. Yeah, I forget if that's on that one. Yeah, I think it is. So it didn't sell. It didn't go gold right away like the last two. But hey, look, they had two great albums in a row. You're gonna have one.
It got I'm a Country Boy.
Yeah.
Give Me 3 Steps. Don't Ask Me No Question.
Give Me 3 Steps. Yeah, good song.
Saturday Night Special.
Saturday Night. Yep, I remember that. It's got Ooh That Smell on it, though, right?
Yeah,
it's on there. Now,
what was the name of the album again?
Nothing Fancy.
Nothing Fancy.
Yeah. Now, there was.
Wow, that was what I just read. You was the. That was just so. This is that was It's it had that, but this was a playlist for a show that they would do. They would start Whiskey Rock and Roller, Needle and the Spoon, I'm a Country Boy, Give Me 3 Steps, and then they will end the concert
with Freebird.
With Freebird.
Yeah. Well, they still do it. They still do it. They did it after Ronnie died, but they would have it as an instrumental.
As an instrumental, all right.
Yeah. For a while they did it that way. With Johnny Van Zant, the brother, I believe he sang it. I'm trying to remember when I saw them.
All right,
I think he sang it. Yeah.
Mike, so the song that came out of the album was I'm a Country Boy and Saturday Night Special. Cheating Woman, Rainbow Song, I'm on the Hunt, I'm Losing It, Main in the Shade. So it was only like an album that had 8 songs on it.
It didn't have That Smell on it?
That Smell. Let's see.
Or is that on the next one?
Let me see. I'm looking at the fancy. I'm looking at the album so far. Because they got the album. And that fucking album, even though it didn't do it, still did platinum.
Yeah, eventually, of course. I mean, all their albums sold. At least the ones with Ronnie. Okay. All right, we'll get to it. We'll get to it because I do talk about that song in a minute.
All right.
What would happen during the tour for Nothing Fancy is that there was starting to be some infighting in the band. And one night, Ronnie and Ed King's guitar roadie got arrested. Okay, some stupid shit. And they had a gig the next night. Ronnie got out. The roadie wasn't available yet. And Ed King had to go out on stage with old guitar strings. Okay. And he was having some technical problems because the strings were breaking as the show went on. And he kind of wasn't playing that good. And Ronnie chastised him like on stage in front of everybody. And he just got pissed off. And he was, after the show, he ended up quitting the band over it because he's like, fuck you. You got my roadie arrested anyway, And, there was a lot of excess in the band. Some of the guys didn't want to put up with it. I mean, Ronnie was out of hand at times. He would eventually try to rein himself in, but of course, tragedy would happen. But Collins and Rossington got into a serious car accident over the Labor Day weekend in 1976, and that caused some canceled tour dates, and it slowed down for the follow-up to Nothing Fancy. Rossington's accident inspired the Van Zant Collins written song That Smell. Okay, so my bad, That Smell is on Street Survivors. I had a mental block there for a second. There's a lot of good songs on Street Survivors. I always forget that. But it's a cautionary tale about drug abuse that's clearly aimed at Rossington and maybe another band member. Okay, and Rossington admitted on several occasions that he's the Prince Charming character in the song in the song That Smell, who crashes his car into an oak tree while high on Quaaludes. Okay, listen to the words.
Yeah,
it's telling the story. Okay, and but Ronnie Van Zant in '76, his daughter Melody was born, and he was trying to rein in some of the excess and clean up his act a bit. The Street Survivors album that came out in 1977 turned out to be a showcase for the band's new guitar player who replaced Ed King a year earlier, and his name was Steve Gaines. All right. Ronnie loved Gaines. As soon as he heard him play, he wanted him in the band to replace King. And he loved his style and his technique. He would go around saying how, he's the best player in the band and he's going to take them over the top and they're going to make, a fortune with him and all that. And Van Zant actually co-wrote a song with him called You Got That Right. And then also Gaines had brought a song in from before he was in Lynyrd Skynyrd called I Know a Little, which he actually sings on, okay? And he sings also on the track Ain't No Good Life. And that's the only song that in the Ronnie Van Zant era, Ronnie doesn't sing on.
Wow.
Okay? So they like Gaines enough to, put him in this lead position. The hit singles off of Street Survivors were What's Your Name, and also That Smell. Tom Dowd, who had worked with the Allman Brothers, actually produced that record. Okay, so
wow.
you have that connection. Yeah, that connection right there. Just 3 days after the album was released on October 20th, 1977, following a performance at Greenville Memorial Auditorium in Greenville, South Carolina, the band had chartered their Convair CV-240 bound for Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where they were going to play next. They had this plane for other times. It was not a reliable plane. This is depicted very well in the movie Street Survivors, the true story about the Lynyrd Skynyrd plane crash, which came out about 2 years ago. Artimus Pyle is in this movie, and it's basically told from his perspective. Very informative because there's been a lot of misinformation over the years. I'm assuming that what happened in the movie is accurate for the most part. It's told from Artemis's perspective, and Artemis, it's some story what happens with him, but they were scheduled to appear in Baton Rouge at Louisiana State University, and the plane was a wreck. I mean, it was an old World War II prop plane, okay, pretty much, and a lot of people were on it, and it used to backfire. It used to have engine issues, and the pilots were always assuring the band that it's fine, it's nothing, it's just the engine is just like that, whatever. But they were afraid of this plane even before the crash. So
you didn't hear that? What was it? Aerosmith? I think Aerosmith. They knew those pilots, and they were like drinking a bottle of Jack Daniel when they were doing something. Yeah. You heard that whole thing?
Yeah, I think Aerosmith had dealt with the two pilots before. Yeah. I don't know if it was on a different plane, but they were known to be drinking and stuff like that. That's not really shown in the movie, which I thought was interesting because I thought that was part of the story. But I guess maybe that was one occasion with Aerosmith. I don't know if they were doing it that night because they didn't show it.
Yeah.
But what happened was they actually ran out of fuel. One of the engines gave out, the one that used to backfire all the time. If you remember in the film, the co-pilot seemed really inexperienced.
Yeah.
Okay. And his name was William Gray. The pilot's name was Walter McCreary, who seemed a little more experienced, but kind of like all business, he didn't want to let anything stop him. Okay. Yeah. He didn't want to be involved with paperwork and having inspections and things like that. And he just, went along with it until it was too late, and, Gray seemed like, he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't fill the plane up right with enough gas when they left. And, you're supposed to check with a dipstick or something, and he didn't do that. When the engine gave out, now they were on, it was a twin engine. They were on just one engine, which you could probably do for a while. Okay. But if you remember, he actually dumped fuel.
Yeah,
stupid idiot. They were on E, and he dumped fuel more. You know, you got to wonder, like, if he hadn't done that, would they have made it to some field or something? Because they crashed right into the trees, okay, about 5 miles northeast of Gillsburg, Mississippi, on their way to Louisiana. Yeah, I mean, Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Gaines' older sister, Cassie, who was a backup singer, assistant road manager, Dion Kilpatrick, and pilot Walter McCreary and the co-pilot William Gray were all killed upon impact. All right. Some of the roadies survived but sustained serious injuries. Tour manager Ron Eckerman lived. Artimus lived. Okay. And, you know, a few other people, but they was very hurt. Okay. Now, I was watching that movie. I was on the edge of my seat when that plane was going down, because I never really thought about what happens when you crash into trees. Okay. I mean, Rossington, I think it was Rossington, had like pieces, like a stump of the tree stuck in him, and Artimus Pyle had to pull it off him. And you just see it, it's very descriptive. The movie really shows what happens when a plane hits trees. And it breaks apart, obviously, but, like, you know, the trees go through you and go through the cabin and the wood and everything. It's like missing.
Yeah,
it's like being hit.
It's almost like getting cut by butter. It's like butter. It's like a
knife going through butter. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I never really seen that depicted in a movie with a plane crash before.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, that was very wild. Now, and then, you know, Artimus, being one of the survivors, he was really banged up. He tried to get help. He saw that Ronnie was dead. He saw a few other people were dead. The pilot was up in a tree. He was totally ejected from the plane and stuck up in a tree, dead. Okay, the co-pilot was on the ground. Ronnie was on the ground, but the pilot himself actually got ejected from the plane. That's crazy. Yeah.
Crazy.
And he had to leave the site, go through a swamp. There were snakes all over the place. Okay. Then he gets into a farm area, and some people see him, but he just looks like a raving lunatic because he had really long hair and he's all bloody and, you know, banged up, clothes are torn, and he looks like a maniac. So they run away from him. He gets to the farmhouse and he's maybe like 50 feet away from the door. The door opens up and a guy pulls a gun on him, okay, and actually shoots him. He actually takes a shot, hits him, okay. I guess like in the leg. It was hard to tell where it hit him, but didn't hurt him that badly. But being on top of a plane crash, he gets fucking shot, okay. And then he's saying, "I need help, I need help, I need help." And they finally understand what happened, and that's when everything goes on. He goes to the hospital, and then they find the wreckage in the trees, okay, in the woods.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing. Like, they had no way of getting to anybody in time. You know, I'm not sure if anybody died while they were waiting to be found. I don't think so. I don't think it happened. I think people lived, and they lived until help came. And whoever was dead was already dead. But if it was any other way, I don't think they ever could have got to them in time. You know, luckily it did nothing like that. Now, following the crash, the Street Survivors album went platinum, reaching number 5 in America. The single "What's Your Name" went to number 13 on the singles chart in early 1978. The original album cover for Street Survivors had featured a photograph of the band with flames behind them. I remember this as a kid, this being a big discussion. You know, were they cursed? Okay, you know, the album cover had originally had them in flames, and Steve Gaines was particularly covered in flames, kind of more than the others. And I remember this as a kid. Like, there was about a 6-month period, 77, 78, where everybody was into Lynyrd Skynyrd. It was like everybody discovered them after the crash. Okay. Yeah. I mean, they had their fans. They were big anyway. But people really were like, "Oh, did you hear what happened?" Everybody went out and bought the records. and stuff, and was wearing the shirts. And I remember people saying, "Oh, they were cursed because of the album cover." You know, was that like that whole thing? So what had happened is, you know, out of respect, basically for the people that died, MCA Records changed the album cover, and they put out the rest of them. The rest of them that came out with just kind of like a simple picture with them like in a black background. Teresa Gaines, Steve's widow, was the one that kind of asked MCA to do that, and they agreed. The 30th anniversary, though, if you buy the deluxe edition of that album on CD, they brought back the original cover.
Oh, so, they did?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Now, you know, Lynyrd Skynyrd broke up right after this. There was no way that they can go on. They did reunite in 1979 for one song. They did an instrumental version of Freebird at a Charlie Daniels volunteer jam show. Okay, it was Jam 5. And Charlie Daniels used to put on these shows, and Lynyrd Skynyrd showed up. Now Leon Wilkeson at that show, who had badly broken his arm in the crash. This was only, you know, a year and a half later. Okay. He was still getting physical therapy. So he remained in the audience along with Judy Van Zant, Teresa Gaines, JoJo Billingsley, and Leslie Hawkins. Those two were part of the backup singers that they had. They were called the Honkettes. Now, Rossington, Collins, Wilkerson, and Powell formed the Rossington Collins Band, which put out an album in 1980 and an album in 1981. The first one was called Anytime, Anyplace, Anywhere, and that was followed by This Is the Way. Both came out on MCA Records. Now, what they did was, to avoid any kind of comparison to Lynyrd Skynyrd, since that was core guys in the band, they had a female singer, and her name was Dale Krantz. And they just didn't want anybody comparing them, saying, "Oh, you're just doing Lynyrd Skynyrd again," like that kind of stuff. And because Ronnie was dead, and he was beloved by Skynyrd fans, you know, the fact that he died crushed a lot of people. They would always do as an encore Freebird as an instrumental. Okay, the Rossington Band. And it was kind of a short-lived band, though. It had only lasted a couple of years because Collins and Rossington had a falling out over Dale Krantz. Apparently, they both dug her, okay? And Rossington ended up marrying her, which put a rift between the two guys. Kind of interesting. They'd been through a major band, a plane crash, and then the chick stops their friendship. I mean, that's I don't know, man. There had to be more to that story. The Rossington Band, he would marry Dale, and he would form what was called the Rossington Band, okay, leaving the Collins name out. And he would release 2 albums. One was called Return to the Scene of the Crime in 1986 and Love Your Man in 1988. They also opened for the Lynyrd Skynyrd tribute tour in 1987 and 88. Now, other members continued to make music in the years to come. Billy Powell would play keyboards in a band called Vision, which was a Christian rock band. He became a born-again Christian after the plane crash, and he would often speak to the audience about how the crash brought him to that decision about becoming a born-again. Artimus Pyle started APB, the Artimus Pyle Band, in 1982, and that would feature the past Skynyrd backup singers, the Honkettes, JoJo Billingsley and Leslie Hawkins. They released one album on MCA called APB in 1982. In 1980, Alan Collins' wife, her name was Kathy Collins, died. Okay, she was miscarrying a child and had a massive hemorrhage and died. It was their third child. It was supposed to be their third child, so very strange kind of accident there. He would form what was called the Alan Collins Band 3 years later in 1983. It basically had the remnants of the Rossington Collins band that didn't go with Rossington. Yeah. Okay, they released one album on MCA called Here, There, and Back. But he visibly, Collins was starting to crumble. He was messed up over the plane crash. He was messed up over the Rossington Collins band. He was messed up about his wife dying. Okay.
Man, and fucked up.
Yeah, and he began to drink and do drugs excessively. This went on for about 3 years after her death. And on January 29th, 1986, Collins was 33 years old. He was with his girlfriend at the time, Deborah Jean Watts, in his Ford Thunderbird just outside Jacksonville, Florida. And he drove the car into a ditch. Okay, he was intoxicated. He was driving, and he drove the car into the ditch, and it killed Deborah Jean. Okay, it also left him paralyzed from the chest down. Okay, so he was done after that. In 1987, the surviving members of Lynyrd Skynyrd reunited for a full-scale tour. Okay, Gary Rossington, Billy Powell, Leon Wilkeson, Artimus Pyle, along with guitarist Ed King, who rejoined the lineup. Okay, Johnny Van Zant, which was Ronnie's younger brother, took over as lead singer. Alan Collins obviously couldn't play. He was paralyzed, but he participated as a musical director. And he had gotten into some legal trouble because of that driving while intoxicated that killed his girlfriend. And part of the plea deal, very interesting, that he got, because he avoided jail time, okay? But what he had to do is, while he was on tour, he was required to be wheeled out every night on stage and talk to the audiences and tell them what happened and why he's not playing in the band.
Yeah. And then they came and sung That Smell.
Yeah. I mean, that smell. That smell was about him. Okay, obviously before all that happened to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was about him. Okay, and sadly, in 1989, he would pass away because he actually January of 1990 he would pass away from pneumonia that he had gotten earlier in 1989. He was only 37 years old. Poor guy.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, totally disastrous. It was disastrous. Originally, this reunion, which did very well on tour, it was supposed to be a one-off thing. It was captured on a double live album called Southern by the Grace of God, the Lynyrd Skynyrd Tribute Tour of 1987. However, the band decided to stay together, and this created some legal problems because Judy Van Zant, her last name was now Janice, and Teresa Gaines, whose last name was now Rapp, they sued for violating an agreement that the band had made after the plane crash, that they would not try to exploit the Lynyrd Skynyrd name for profit. Okay, it was supposed to be a one-time reunion thing, which was probably more than they had ever bargained on, but they weren't supposed to stay together and continue. So Janice and Rapp, okay, the two widows, actually sued, and as part of the settlement, the agreement, they collected 30% of that tour's revenue, representing what their dead husbands would have gotten. Okay. Wow. It came out to a lot of money. And they also acquired an arrangement that any touring band using the Skynyrd name had to include Gary Rossington and at least two of the four surviving members from the pre-crash era. Namely, that would be Wilkerson, Powell, King, or Pyle. Okay.
Wow.
And that rule would be in place until 2001. Technically, at that point, they didn't have all those guys in the band, and they should have retired the name. But somehow they were able to stay on. I don't get all that, to be honest with you. I don't understand. I mean, the arrangement there too much. either you're going to stay together or you're not. I don't know how you could stay together and guarantee this guy's going to be in the band, and it's kind of crazy, right?
It's crazy. It's a crazy.
Yeah. Now in 1991,
I find that fascinating.
Obviously, Van Zant and Gaines, the widows, okay, they were getting paid. They were getting something, so they were allowing this to go on. The money was good, I guess. They wanted shit. Money talks, bullshit walks. Fucking, they're remarried. Ronnie's dead. Like the other guys are dead. Gaines is dead. Might as well cash in.
And the wives are still cashing in.
Yeah. Notice how they use their names. They didn't change their names they used the hyphenated names.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So in 1991, the band would release their first post-reunion studio album. It was called Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1991. But by that time, the band had added a second drummer. They went back to that kind of lineup. His name was Kurt Custer. Artimus Pyle left the band that same year, leaving Custer as a single drummer again. Okay. They released a second album in 1993 called The Last Rebel. Later that year, Randall Hall was replaced by Mike Estes. Now, Ed King had to take a break from touring in 1996. He was not well. He had heart complications that really required a heart transplant. Okay. So he was replaced by Huey Thomason. The band did not let King rejoin after he recovered. Okay. Not sure why. I think they might have felt they didn't want him to die on tour or something like that. Okay. But, I'm not quite sure why that happened. But Mike Estes ended up being replaced by Ricky Medlock, who played with them for a short time in the early 70s on drums. The result was a major retooling of the band's guitar sound. You had Medlock and Thompson would be major songwriters, okay, contributing to Rossington and Van Zant. So the dynamic of the songwriting changed a little bit. And Ronnie Van Zant was writing, okay, also. Not Ronnie, excuse me, Johnny, the younger brother.
Yeah.
The first album with this lineup came out in 1997, and it was entitled 20. Okay. The band released Edge of Forever in 1999. By then, Hale had left the band, and the drums were played by sessions drummer Kenny Aronoff. Kenny's a well-known sessions drummer. Michael Cartellone became the permanent drummer once they went out on tour. And despite the growing number of post-reunion albums live, the band would still play pretty much their 70s material. They didn't do too much new stuff.
Amazing, yeah.
Amazing. I saw them around that time, and they did like 2 new songs. That was it. And they had quite a few new albums, but nobody cared. They wanted to hear Freebird.
Yeah.
The band would actually, and this went past me. I didn't know this, but they released a Christmas album in 2000 entitled Christmas Time Again. Leon Wilkeson, Skynyrd's bassist since 1972, was found dead in his hotel room on July 7th, 2001. He had bad emphysema. He had liver problems. He passed away, and he was replaced by Ian Evans. The first album with Evans would be called Vicious Cycle. That was released in 2003. This album was the most successful to date of the post-reunion albums, with a minor hit single in the song Red, White, and Blue. A double album collection called 30 was released, and it included 70s stuff and also newer stuff. A live DVD of their Vicious Cycle tour and a live album called Lynyrd Skynyrd Live, The Vicious Cycle Tour, was released on June 22nd, 2004. In March 13th, 2006, they would be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay.
They were.
Yep. Now, Thomason would leave Skynyrd in 2006 and be replaced by ex-Hot Apple Pie guitarist Mark Sparky Matejka. And November 2nd, 2007, the band performed at the Gator Growl at University of Florida in front of 50,000 people. This was their biggest show that they ever had, okay, in America. But that would be eclipsed a year later when they would play in front of 11,000 people at the Bama Jam in Alabama. Okay, 111,000 people they played in front of.
Wow,
that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of mofo's.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, on June 28th, 2009, keyboardist Billy Powell died. They suspected he died of a heart attack. They never did a full autopsy. It was at his home near Jacksonville. He was only 56. He was replaced by Peter Keys on keyboard. Okay. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 2009. Skynyrd announced that they had signed a worldwide deal with Roadrunner Records, okay, in association with their own label called Loud and Proud Records. Roadrunner, I believe, was going to be distributing everything. They released a new album called God and Guns. I remember when this came out, September 29th, 2009. They had a tour of the U.S. and Europe. Wow. Robert Kearns of the Bottle Rockets had joined the band on bass since Ian Evans had passed away, okay, of cancer at age 48.
Man, these guys had a lot of death, a lot of
trouble. Yeah, a lot of deaths even after the plane crash. Yep.
I think they were cursed, man.
Yeah. Now, in addition to the tour, Lynyrd Skynyrd appeared at the Sean Hannity Freedom Center Freedom Concert Series in late 2010. Hannity was always playing Gods and Guns on his TV show and on his radio show. There was a song called "That Ain't My America" that he used to play. Yeah. The tour was called Rebels and Bandoleros. The band toured continuously through 2011, playing shows with ZZ Top and the Doobie Brothers.
The Doobie Brothers.
Doobie Brothers. Now, May 12th, 2012, the band announced the impending release of a new studio album called Last of a Dying Breed, and a new tour of Europe and North America was planned. On August 21st, 2012, the album was released. In celebration, the band did special autograph signings on mostly the southeast leg of their tour. It was around the time that the band, now this is when things get interesting. Around this time was when people started having problems with the Confederate flag. Okay, about 10 years ago. Yeah. And they were getting a lot of pressure to drop the use of the flag. All right. Wow. It had always been used as a backdrop, on their stage, most of the time since the early 70s. But because of the criticism around it being considered racist and being used by white supremacists and all that stuff, they kind of had to drop it briefly. Okay.
Yeah.
They would go on CNN to promote the Gods and Guns album. I'm sorry, Last of a Dying Breed album. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But they also explained why they were going to stop using the flag. By September of 2012, though, shortly after appearing on CNN, they had received an outpouring of letters and emails telling, from fans mad that they dropped the Confederate flag. Okay. So they reversed their decision, interestingly, and they made another press release saying that it had nothing to do with racism. It's about Southern heritage and Southern pride and states' rights symbolism, and they didn't interpret it that way.
Yeah, they were using it for a different reason. It was almost like the General Lee had a Confederate flag. They didn't mean.
Look, 99% in our lives. How many times have you seen that flag? Billy Idol used to use that flag on his guitar.
A lot of people.
Billy Idol is British. Okay, what did he care?
Yeah.
Okay, but there's people that feel that when they see it, it makes them feel uncomfortable, and it's a 10-year-old. This fight's been going on for years, but they reversed their decision and they started using it again, and they continued using it. Now, original drummer Bobby Burns died at age 64 on April 3rd, 2015, when he crashed his car into a tree while driving alone near his home in Cartersville, Georgia. Between 2015 and 2017, the band was fairly inactive. They had to cancel some shows because Gary Rossington's health was not that good. Former member Ed King, who was battling cancer, died in his Nashville home August 22nd, 2018, at age 68. Poor guy. Had a heart transplant and then died of cancer.
Damn. You know what? How crazy that is, man? Can't get a break.
Your number's up, man. Your number's up. You know?
Can't get a break.
Yep. Now, on January 25th, 2018, Lynyrd Skynyrd announced that their last of the Street Survivors farewell tour would start on May 4th of that year. Supporting acts included Kid Rock, Hank Williams Jr., Bad Company played with them, Charlie Daniels Band, the Marshall Tucker Band, 38 Special, Cheap Trick did some shows, Blackberry Smoke, the Randy Bachman Band, Blackfoot, Massive Wagons, and even Status Quo. Okay, the British band Status Quo played with them on this farewell tour. On January 8th, 2020, Gary Rossington stated that though they would no longer tour, Lynyrd Skynyrd would still do the occasional live show. Johnny Van Zant had also claimed that one last studio album would be ready, as they had a lot of songs in the can. And obviously, 2020 came, the pandemic came, everything's been on hold. Hopefully they will come back around.
They got it scheduled for this year, for 2022.
Yeah, they have some shows lined up, right?
Yep, they got some shows, so let's see what happened, man. Holy moly, what a history of car crash, fucking airplane crash, heart attack, transplant.
Yep.
Wow.
Everything that could happen happened to this band. Anything that could happen.
Yeah, but think about it. They've been together so long. It's almost like watching a person's life on TV, you know?
They're like family.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Wow, man, Mike, what a hell of a job, man. I gotta tell you, man, hell of a job.
Thank you.
Do you see that Blondie and the Dam are playing Pier 17?
Yeah. I think they're doing a short tour together.
Yeah,
that might be cool. When is that? It's like May or something, or June?
I think. Oh, I thought it was August.
Maybe it's August.
I forgot what day it was.
I posted about it recently. I forgot what day it was. I got a lot coming up. You know, I have a shoulder surgery scheduled, so I'm gonna have to recover from that.
Yeah,
and
be lumped up.
I'm gonna be lumped up a little bit, and on whatever painkillers they give me. And once I recover, I'll start thinking about, you know, hitting some shows. But right now, I'm kind of just working on the podcasts, doing some reading, research, a lot of things like that I'm doing.
That's good, man, because we got a lot of shit coming up the next couple of weeks with those the Son of Sam Chronicles doing very well. I gotta thank all the people who are watching and follow us. When you're not watching the rock show, jump to the conspiracy show.
Yep, watch both. Watch both.
Yes. And I like the Mike. How do we get in touch with you?
Okay, you can find me on Facebook under RockerMike. Also, the Rock Show Podcast group page on Facebook. You could find me on Instagram, RockerMike212. You could find me on CloutHub and MeWe under RockerMike. And perhaps by the time this show is aired, I will be on Truth Social as RockerMike, but I'll let everybody know about that.
All right. Sounds great. And you can find me on any social media platform. I look at Getting Lumped Up, and I'll be there. You'll see it. You'll see my big head, a picture of three of us. And pretty much that's it, man. And people, remember, don't get drunk.
Get lumped up.
We'll see you soon.
Take care, people.
hear. That will be music to your ears. You'll learn about bands you love or may not know, and it's only here on The Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on The Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on The Rock Show. Don't tell your friends and everyone you know. Let's get lumped up on The Rock Show.